Hello, everyone, and welcome to round 3 of the BUSR GT3 Championship. We are here at Nurburgring, and with me commentating today is Max. How are you feeling today, Max?
Hello everyone, hello Juuso. I'm doing well. I'm excited for this one. Nurburgring. It's a favourite of mine. I think looking at the forecast, it might be a little bit wet. So we could be in for an interesting one.
We very well could be up for an interesting one. Well, we're all familiar with Nurburgring, you especially, Max, but let's clue in some of our newer viewers with the Simhound track guide.
The third Simhound track guide of the season takes us to the Eifel region in Germany for 5.137 kilometers of the Nürburgring, James May's favourite circuit in the world. And we want to go down to Hagen, braking at the 100-meter board, line up on the left, maximise the time that you're going through the corner on the right to carry the most amount of speed. You've got about 1 billion lines to Mercedes arena. This is one of the right ones, using the curbing in the first part, then getting out wide onto the curbing of the second part. You can dive into this third part, make sure you've got the right-hand tyre still on the curb at least, and then the shortest line possible to the exit. And then we're running down to Valvoline. If these cones are still here at the end of the qualifying session, somebody's gone wrong. You want to make sure that you're lining up on the right-hand side, braking, using the curbing a little bit to help you turn in, but you don't want to be going all the way over it or you will spin. Got some AstroTurf on the outside to help you power out to a Dunlop hairpin. These are quite popular in motorsport, aren't they? You want to brake around the point that the main brick comes in, and you can either V off or U off. This one goes for a V line. You can use some of the curbing on the exit on the run up the hill to the Schumacher S. Again, curbing is your friend, but mostly in this final part you want to stay off the curbs if it's wet. Apart from maybe here, we've got the AstroTurf to help you out. Again, AstroTurf might help you, but not necessarily in the wet. Brake at 100 before we go into Michelin. You've got some green AstroTurfing on the inside and outside, and then Vorsteiner. You've got a little bit on the outside. You don't want to be taking the curb on the inside particularly much. Running down through Advan, which is flat out. You want to follow this almost painted line of warded rubber as we then run down to NGK. You can brake at the 100, brake at the 50 if you're brave. Use all of the curbing, and then you've got some little bits on the runoff as well before you go to the Coca-Cola curve. Brake where you see those white lines. Make sure not to hit the pit wall on the entry, and then power out on the exit. Unlike some of the other tracks we've seen this season, you're lining up exactly the same for a hot lap as you are in the race. Let's see who can tame this monster track.
And that was the Simhound track guide for Nürburgring. Yeah, that was a dry lap. We're potentially expecting some rain today. What are we feeling about that, Max? Are the drivers prepared? Are you prepared to cast a rainy race?
I think we've seen a lot of drivers in the practice session early today. I think about when it opened there were 10 drivers in there, which is a lot compared to normal. So I think they're all trying to get that wet practice in because, usually where you might hop into an open lobby, you don't necessarily have those options today. One thing that was mentioned on the Simhound track guide was the multiple lines through the Mercedes-Benz arena. When you're in the wet, that then spreads across the entire track. So that's going to be interesting to see the different lines that people are taking, whether people are going to try and keep a bit more momentum, and also, whether we see the weather conditions change. How will that affect the race? How will that affect the strategy?
Yeah, strategy's been a big talking point throughout the season, but we're just about to go into quali as well. I think cars are already starting to get out of the pits very soon, so we'll be going into that in just a moment. Well, there we go. So yeah, cars already out on track. We see Angus Fender out first in his usual style, and it is rather wet, not just a little bit wet, Max. It is very wet. And how does that impact quali? I mean, we're going to be seeing a varying amount of strategies in the race, but it's not exactly a normal qualifying either, is it?
Yeah, I said this last week when we were at Zolder, and it wasn't necessarily true, but I think we'll see people going out and staying out for the session just to get a feel for the track. So maybe some higher fuel runs at the start here, and then by the end of the session, they'll be on their low fuel runs, getting ready for that, trying to find that fastest lap.
Yeah, and we see a lot of, well, every single car out on track currently, and every single car on that, well, first couple sectors of the circuit as well. And we're not actually used to seeing that. We're used to seeing a little bit more strategy. So maybe there is, you know, as you said, every driver trying to get as much time in that, as much time on that track as well. But interesting thing to note here today, I kind of just touched on it there. Angus Fender is actually racing in this race, so Harry Spears, a bit of a challenge today, maybe.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Angus. I'm not sure how his calendar lines up, but I know he's been signed up and he's clearly wanted to take the challenge to Harry Spears, which I think this is sort of a grudge match we sort of missed out on a little bit at the end of last season. Obviously, both of them started the season, but then Harry Spears decided to drop out, citing reasons for that was the fact he had his dissertation. Obviously, this being a university league, always we see even the best in the business, Angus Fender, losing it there on the curbs. But yeah, this being a university league, obviously university comes first for a lot of people. So we didn't see that battle between Harry and Angus, but yeah, today could be an interesting one. Also, be interesting to see if Jack can get up there in the wet. The wet is the equaliser, so it'll be interesting to see whether he can get up there a little bit more today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we talked about car balance throughout the season as well. In the wet, that balance is completely thrown out of the window. We have a very, very different, very different best cars, I would say. Bentley, not generally known as a good wet car, but has kind of changed a little bit in the recent weeks, I say, as the balance of the patch has kind of been dialed in. But the BMW is really the main question mark here. We haven't really seen it all that much in the wet, especially here in the BUSR. So it'll be interesting to see how it performs, especially in the hands of Angus Fender.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, we had a big patch today. I noticed when I came on to do some laps of the track to see how the drivers would be feeling today. There was a big patch and an update after obviously 1.8 came out a few weeks ago now. So it'll be interesting to see whether that affects the cars in any way, and who can come out on top and take advantage of that.
Ooh, as we see a car in the grass there, that is the number 2 of Adam Lee. Mercedes getting a little bit caught out by the conditions. We're starting to see the first times come through in just a bit. Obviously, Angus Fender had that little bit of a drift in the Mercedes arena, so Anna Langsdale-Foster will be the first actually, never mind. So Angus Fender, despite that drift, actually does the current provisional pole time. I am slightly confused, but apparently that was a quick line.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that line was quick, but it must have been for the rest of the circuit. I mean, we've seen, drivers throughout the years, the best excel in the wet conditions, whether it be in motor racing, like at the top level karting, or apparently sim racing. So Angus has certainly made up for it for the rest of the lap. So I'd hate to see what he can do when he doesn't have a half spin in the Mercedes-Benz arena.
Yeah, and even Jack Miller, someone we're used to seeing at the very top of the standings in qualifying, 2/10 off of Angus Fender there. So, well, there we go. Harry Spears now takes provisional pole with exactly a second faster time. So maybe that second was what Angus Fender lost in that Mercedes arena, but I thought it was going to be more, and it does go to show how in the wet the traditional lines and perhaps the traditional driving styles might not be the might not be the best solution every single time.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Obviously, different lines they're taking. Harry Spears seems to be taking rather conventional lines here. We'll see what Angus does as he comes into the final chicane. Braking usually around the 75-meter mark, but here still roughly the same. Turning in, yeah, that all seems pretty normal, which is something that you wouldn't see in the real world necessarily, but it appears that here today taking the normal lines is what you've got to be doing. So it's interesting to see how the other drivers may adapt to that, whether they'll be watching. See all of them are out on tracks and we're going to be watching the laps now as Angus goes top of the timing with a 0.2 of a second gap. That seems about what we were expecting. But I think it will be near the end of the session where we start to see the times really become representative of where these drivers should be.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not showing a change of weather for us today, or right now anyway, for the qualifying session. But we do know the amount of water on track can shift very quickly, especially with this many cars on the grid. It will change. So towards the end of the session, we should be seeing a tiny improvement in times, assuming the weather doesn't change. As Jack Miller now comes through and beats Angus Fender by 2/10 as well. So we might already be seeing a little bit of that right now. Looking up and down the field just a little bit as the drivers start to finish their first couple of laps, I would say no major surprises. Although Cavbud in 5th position currently, pretty good results so far, assuming he's able to stay there. Timanis, unfortunately, was not able to participate in the first two races of the season. Currently holding 7th place in his Porsche, and I think he's potentially one to watch as well. Used to seeing him fairly high up in the order.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he comes back after that 2-week break and see how he gets up to speed with these new drivers in this new season. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see his performance. Speaking of the Porsche, as we go back to the BMW now, you can see these top guys taking a lot of curb, and I think there's a mental block for a lot of these drivers that, you know, in the wet you just don't use the curves, but you see these top guys, they're still hammering it, particularly in that last chicane. So I think it's a case of certainly of confidence in these wet conditions, rather than maybe necessarily outright speed, as we see Angus slow down to return to garage. He's going to do some setup changes, so it'll be interesting to see if he can go any faster with those changes, perhaps.
Yeah, and set up something that is potentially important in the wet. We obviously know that having a stable car in the wet can be extremely important, especially for that confidence you were talking about. As Jason List goes 5th fastest right now, 2 seconds off of the current pole sitter Angus Fender. But yeah, setup can be a major factor. I mean, we've all experienced races where the setup just isn't comfortable in the wet, and suddenly a setup that felt amazing in the dry just does not work in the wet at all, and it's just too unstable to drive. And I wonder if we might see a bit of that in the race as well, as drivers may have prepared a little bit less.
Yeah, I think in ACC with the GT cars, it's more difficult to just adapt a setup to some wet conditions. Like in the F1 game, for example, obviously you've got firstly the setup is more basic overall, but then you've also got the ability to adjust the front and rear wing, so you can adjust them in tandem to just give yourself more downforce. Here though, a lot of the cars you can only adjust the rear wing, so you can put all the rear wing you want in the world on, but then you have a massively understeery car. So it's sort of trying to find that balance. You put a load of rear wing on, then you've got to play around with anti-roll bar suspension to try and get that turn in, and it becomes quite a difficult task.
Definitely. And we're heading into the we're deep into the last 5 minutes of the qualifying session as well. We see a yellow flag there as the 301, that's Asian Wells, off. Drivers starting their final couple of laps now for the qualifying session. Faruqi went 4th fastest there earlier. Are we seeing any surprises yet? I think perhaps it's Jimmy Lin all the way down in 9th position, something that could potentially improve, as we do see the BMW of Nathan Carey able to eat those curbs in those on the final chicane. So it is definitely possible.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's again a case of how soft you want your car to be. Obviously the front engine cars can take a lot of curb. Probably too much there from Nathan Carey, but yeah, he managed to get through unscathed. But I think so far not too many surprises, like you say, Jimmy Lin down in 7th, but again, we're seeing that sort of fourth place battle between Faruqi, Langsdale Foster, Lynn, and List that we've seen over the first couple of races, and now Simanis is into that mix. So Lynn, he's not too far behind those guys up ahead. So it's there's not a big gap there. So it's not necessarily going to, well, it'll be a disappointment because obviously they want to be up in that fourth position as opposed to down in seventh, but not too much of a gap to get up there in the race perhaps.
Yeah, definitely going to be a close one. And I think also just the attrition is going to be a factor here as well as Cath, but a little bit deep on the chicane, not able to maximize that exit. Let's see what he's able to do on this lap, or whether he's just going to set up for the next one. But yeah, it's going to be, we're going to be expecting a fair few incidents in a wet race. So I think attrition is going to be a factor here as well. And it'll be really interesting to see, especially in that midfield that have been competing quite closely with each other, who's able to come out on top and who's able to kind of survive and avoid any incidents, especially in the first couple laps as drivers get used to whatever the track conditions are.
Yeah, I think the Mercedes-Benz Arena it invites chaos in the dry, so we'll see how it goes in the way. I reckon turn 3 is going to be the one to watch, with people maybe trying to go for a move that they might do in the dry, but slight skidding on a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how that first lap plays out as we head into the final sort of few laps of qualifying now.
Yeah, currently Angus Fender on pole with a 2:05.7, a strong time, almost half a second up on Jack Noah in second place, and Harry Spears in third. So obviously the wet track not doing Harry any favors so far. The pair of McLarens of Faruqi and Langsdale Foster in fourth and fifth, with the Porsche of Tumanis and McLaren of Jimmy Lynn in seventh place. Jason List currently 8th, Cath Bud in 9th, and Nathan Carey in 10th. Yeah, midfield is quite close in times, but no real surprises there. I think Shaw not being there is also another kind of you'd expect him to be there, but with the midfield being as close as it is, we do see them shifting orders quite a lot of times. Jack Noah improves, but not enough. A 10th behind now, just over 10th and a half. And we'll have the opportunity for one more lap as Nathan Carey there goes back into the pits, his qualifying over. So yeah, it's gonna be a close one, I think, all the way up to the end of quali here.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Spears so far back from Fender, and more importantly behind Nola. Obviously we've seen those two together on track for the last couple of races. Well, there we go, he goes within half a second. So that's a bit more like the gap we're used to at the top. A little bit wide there from Fletcher as he heads into this final lap. But yeah, I think at the minute you can gain a little bit of time on your lap and you'll gain a lot of places, and we'll see whether Fletcher's going to be able to do that as he comes across the line soon. Now, and he doesn't. He gains 7/10 but no positions, sadly. He was sort of at the edge of that bubble with Ishan Wells and Cam Gold there at the bottom half of the midfield.
Yeah, as Angus Fender's qualifying is over, the 2:05.7 will be his final lap, as Mushtaq now coming through the final hairpin, and that's an invalid lap. Not able to keep it together there, so that is Mushtaq's qualifying over. A couple more cars on track. Jimmy Lynn, we'll see if he can improve. Oh, and that's a spin into the pits, though. Conveniently, we'll just return to garage there, and not able to improve his time. So Jimmy Lynn stays 7th, assuming no one else quicker comes through. Jack Noah now through the final chicane. Let's see what he's able to do, if he's able to nab that pole. He's coming through the final hairpin on the power as early as possible. Now run to the line. Improves, but not enough. Or did he improve? May have been just a little glitch there. on my feed. Yeah, no, but not enough to take pole from Angus Fender. I believe Harry Spears is still on track. That's correct. So he will have a chance as Logic comes through the final chicane into the hairpin. A little bit wide again. Maybe just a different choice in mind, though. I might be wrong there. As he comes through onto the final straight and across the line improves, but not enough. And I think that was about a 3/10 improvement. And Harry Spears is across the line as well, doesn't improve, so stays third. And Jason List, now the final car on track, will come through and doesn't improve. So Angus Fender, Jack Noah, Harry Spears, and Faruqi are our first two rows, and that's well, I wouldn't say a massive surprise, but a surprise either way. I mean, Jack Noah beating Harry Spears as well. We haven't seen that this season before. Obviously, Angus
Mhm.
Fender, we could expect to be fighting for that pole, but I don't think we expected a gap this large, Max.
Yeah, I think it's still quite close up at the top. It's not something we're seeing. Like Harry hasn't been the one who's been 4/10 back in any of the situations we've seen so far. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how those three play out across the race. You know, different strategies, will that come into play? Maybe less so than normal, because I imagine a lot of the drivers will be going just the full race on one set of tires, and it'll just be a case of fuel. But again, you know, do you put in a lot of fuel at the start and run long? Do you put in less and, you know, hopefully be a bit quicker at the start of the race? So it's going to be really interesting to see that first stint and indeed across the whole race, especially with those three. Then you've got that battle that we've talked about behind with Faruqi, Langsdale Foster, Simanis now, and Jimmy Lin. So I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch, and we're going to have to see what happens to the end.
Yeah, definitely. We saw, especially the fuel strategy. I want to pick up on that, especially at Spa last season. I remember we saw Angus Fender running a very low fuel strategy in the beginning. So filled the car up with just a bit less fuel and was able to be that much quicker on the first stint. I don't believe it worked out for him in the end that well. But either way, we have seen variance in strategy, and now we're seeing the three of them now uh, on the same track together for the first time in a while, and yeah, the rain does make the strategy a little bit less complex, maybe, especially when he talked about the tires. But with with the fuel being a rather important part, especially in the wet, the car being heavy actually might feel better in some of these situations. I think that that will be the thing that we're gonna pick up on later in the race. Obviously, we don't know the fuel loads the drivers will be running until effectively they pit. So we won't be able to give you that information, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. But just before we head into the race now, Max, is there any driver to watch? And anyone you really want to pick out and take a closer look at today?
I'm interested to see how Anna Langsdale Foster does again this week. We saw a strong performance from them last week. We'll see whether they can carry that momentum through with them. Um, I think the other driver that I'd like to keep an eye on is Nathan Carey. I know he's done a lot of practice for this week, but not necessarily wet practice, so we'll see how that pays off today.
All right. And we're just about to head onto the formation lap. The drivers are ready to go. Final setup changes happening as as the cars get dropped back onto the road. Um, doesn't look like it's any less wet, at least. And you know, maybe that's a good thing. The drivers might be happy with that. They did just get some experience in these conditions. But what do you do on a wet formation lap, Max? Is there anything different?
Well, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the different brake compounds. In our sprint race format, it's not something that you really mention very often. You usually stick ones on the cars. So in ACC, there's 4 different brake compounds. You've got one which will last about sort of 2 hours and has, you know, the highest performance. Twos which will last, you know, is it upwards of 12 hours or something for an endurance race, or 6 hours for the twos, and then threes you've got usually for endurance racing or slightly colder conditions, or even perhaps the wet. And then 4s are more of an experimental brake compound, which has got really high performance but really high degradation. Now usually, like I said, our drivers will be running 1s for this race, no question. But I know that some different drivers, I think Harry Spears is one of them, favours 3s in these conditions just because the warm-up is a little bit easier. So what do you think we'll see with that, with the different brake performances today?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to watch. Obviously, the conditions are going to affect the choice, but I think we'll see a fairly static choice across the board. We do know drivers communicate with each other, both prior to the race and during the race in a lot of cases. So usually if there is a trick to be found, it will get noticed, and most drivers will be using it. So I don't think we'll see too much trickery, but it is something that the drivers do have to get used to, the difference in the brake compound, the different braking distance, and in general in the wet, the difference in braking. It's definitely something that I know a lot of drivers have struggled to adapt to as we got onto this new patch. The braking in the wet is very different now than what it used to be. But yeah, it's a long formation lap here, so lots of time to prepare, lots of time to think about what you're going to do, whether you're going to make that move into turn 1, whether you're going to wait to the Mercedes arena. And yeah, what do you think about in this kind of a situation where you might not be as familiar with the conditions, you might not be as confident?
I think a race like this today, it's about survival. You're going to be going into that turn 1 and then the Mercedes-Benz arena, and hopefully the driver's going to be thinking, right, if I get through this, then other people will probably fall off during the race and I can gain some positions. But equally, people may go, I can be aggressive here because more people are going to be cautious. So it's just how you decide to approach this race today.
Definitely, and we are already double file. There's a couple pit lane starts, so Cam Gold, Lodge, and Adam Lee are starting in the pit, starting from the pits. So there you might be avoiding whatever carnage will be happening. I believe those are penalties, but yeah. So they'll be considering themselves a little bit lucky. So the green will become very quick here as we're on the main straight and just about to go green here, and we are green for round 3 of the BUSR GT3 Championship. Angus Fender gets a decent start. Jack Noah alongside Harry Spears well clear in 3rd place right now. Angus Fender still on the inside into the braking zone as there is Jason List onto the grass. Angus Fender going a little bit wide. Jack Noah able to get the lead for now. Harry Spears almost closing in on to go into the Mercedes arena. Jack Noah now in the lead. Angus Fender in 2nd. Harry Spears in 3rd. The midfield is all shaken up, as I believe that is the BMW of Cav, but also they're looking to fight Nathan Carey. A little bit unstable there. Scar's still getting settled here as the track conditions not crazy good right now. Angus Fender has a look to the inside, actually almost goes to the back of Jack Noah, able to keep clear. And yeah, we're seeing Dimitris Simanis able to go for a move on Faruqi already. So that is 4th place for Faruqi very quickly. And sorry, that is 5th place for Faruqi as Anna Langstaff Foster has made a move earlier, I believe. And a very, very messy start. A couple cars going, actually, maybe not that messy, no major incidents. A couple cars losing a lot of positions though, as Fletcher here fighting with Ishan Wells, able to stay ahead for now. And it'll be interesting to see as we head into the fast corners here. It's going through the Schumacher S right now as the 2 Bentleys alongside now. That's Ishan Wells, and I'm not entirely sure who that other car is right now. The timing board's a little bit messed up. That's Shaw, and that has gone wide there, so unfortunately that fight for that position is done there. Fletcher able to keep that position for now as Ishan Wells looks to retake that position from no, that's Lodge. Sorry, unfortunately, I don't really remember the numbers as contact there in the chicane, and that's Ishan Wells around. And that's Romley able to avoid the incident relatively clearly, but here we go, back at the front of the pack. Jack Noah goes to the inside to defend Angus Fender on the outside of turn 1. Into the hairpin we go, and Angus Fender not able to do much on the braking zone. Jack Noah able to keep clear in first place for now. And here we see a little bit of the effect of the different lines going into the Mercedes arena. And the pack relatively split up already from the incidents, and was Angus Fender almost into the back of Jack Noah. And yeah, that's quite a lot of position changes in the first couple laps here, Max.
Yeah, and we see Ishar is in the pit lane. I'm not sure whether they picked up damage after we stopped following them with Fletcher and Ishan Wells. I think Fletcher did very well with those two Bentleys bearing down on him. He managed to keep his composure, and somehow they managed to, all three of them, get through without taking too much damage. But yeah, Ish there with an early pit stop, so that's odd to see.
Yeah, and we're seeing it's very interesting to see. I think Angus Fender is seemingly more comfortable with the conditions than Jack Noah, but obviously we know it's really difficult to overtake in the rain, and you have to be that much more careful under braking, especially. It's going to be a difficult overtaking move. We don't exactly have a difficulty counter powered by machine learning here, but I'm gonna say the overtaking difficulty is probably about 80%. What would you say, Max?
Well, the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit and of course the Nordschleife is a difficult place to overtake at the best of times. You know, you've got to set up that move 2, 3, 4 corners earlier, and in the wet that becomes more difficult because, you know, where you previously had 2 lines, you now maybe only have 1. So I think Jack so far is doing a very good job of defending. Angus seems to have a little bit more pace. That BMW does have a lot of pull out of the corners. Compared to the McLaren, it's certainly frustrating, but Jack is so far placing that car perfectly.
Yeah, able to defend to the inside once again, and under braking, it doesn't seem like Angus Fender able to really do much here. Has a better line going through the inside, actually gets a very good line now into the Mercedes arena, however, on the outside, and Jack Noah able to keep hold of the apex there and stay ahead for now. The Angus Fender looks to make a little bit of a move, almost contact there, maybe even a little bit of contact, unsure. But that is, that's Faruqi onto the grass, and that's a major incident. Slides onto the grass very quickly, able to get the car around, has to rejoin safely now. A couple cars around him, and is able to get through, and that's not a good experience. That is not exactly how you want to drive the Mercedes arena.
No, I think by the looks of it, Faruqi probably got out on that AstroTurf, which is usually all fine and usable real estate on the outside in the dry, but yeah, just too slippery in the wet and ended up on the inside there. But yeah, Angus still having another look there up the inside, going into the Dunlop hairpin, but no, and he's definitely not going to make a move through the Schumacher-esque there. I think that's more psychological warfare than anything else. As we see Faruqi dive down the inside of Mushtaq into that hairpin, pushing Mushtaq a little bit wide. And yeah, that's a lovely move there from Faruqi, a textbook pass.
Yeah, very good move there. It doesn't seem like Mushtaq was trying to defend all too much. Obviously not really fighting for the same positions in the end of the race. We do see a couple of these penalties applied. If you haven't noticed those I believe are pre-applied penalties for a warning point system that we use in the league. So those are penalties as a result of that, as Angus Fender looks to get very close once again. Jimmy Lin and Jason List here going through the same chicane as well, a little bit behind, keeping close in 6th and 7th position, as now Angus Fender again very close. Jack Noah has gone to the inside to defend, and side by side they'll go into the braking zone. Angus Fender again on the outside, no room for the switchback. Jack Noah able to keep the apex closed, and then again into the Mercedes arena. Angus Fender forced onto the outside and just not able to get by. Meanwhile, behind them, Harry Spears is just content waiting, about a second behind, currently holding the Simhound fastest lap as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see that Harry hasn't been able to get involved with this battle. As you say, with that Simhound fastest lap, you know, he's clearly got the pace over these two in front as they battle, but just not being able to sort of get involved with the fight as much as obviously Angus and Jack are ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll be looking to get involved very, very quickly if there's any kind of contact between the two. Obviously not hoping for that, but we have seen contact between some of our front runners before, as Furuki now continuing his climb up from that incident at the Mercedes Arena. Fletcher, the next target, will go into the Dunlop hairpin. Not really able to get as good of a launch. Fletcher defense to the inside, will be able to keep it under control. Under braking, goes a little bit deep, and that's a chance for Furuki into the chicane. They'll go side by side. No, Fletcher gets a better launch off the hairpin and able to defend into the Schumacher S, and doesn't actually get a great launch off of that. And not a great exit, but able to put the car right in the center of the track. Furuki not really able to do anything here.
Yeah, I think the thing with that Dunlop hairpin is even if you're on the outside, because of the camber, you can get almost a slingshot off, and that's what Fletcher managed to use as he went up the hill towards the Schumacher S. But he's similar to Jack Noller so far. He may not have the same pace, but so far he's placing the car perfectly.
And here we go once again, a little bit further out this time. But again, going into the braking zone in the toe, Angus Fender on the outside, as we're used to seeing. Oh, a little bit squirrely there under braking, as Jack Noller again able to hold that position in through turn one. And now into the Mercedes Arena they go. And it's going to have to be a very brave move for Angus Fender to make it happen here. Doesn't even try this time. And at what point does this trigger some kind of a strategy, as Furuki into the pits, potentially not wanting to lose any more time from a very well defending Fletcher?
Yeah, well, I think like you mentioned, strategy there. It's interesting to see the pace of them. Obviously, they're all setting fastest laps. Now Jack Noller has taken that Simhound fastest lap, and just a reminder that you can use code BUSR10 at simhound.com for 10% off of all their products: sim rigs, gloves, sim racing shoes, sim racing apparel, whatever you want, you can get it there. And that Simhound fastest lap award winner, each round will get a choice of either a pair of the Simhound gloves or the Simhound sim racing shoes.
Yes, they will. Currently, Harry Spears holding 2 of those awards. Jack Noller clinging on to this one for now. Obviously, very early stages in the race so far, so we'll be seeing how that goes later on. Maybe even perhaps a change in weather. We'll see. Yeah, this battle, we're actually quite used to seeing this. Last season was very similar, if I remember correctly. And look at the spray here coming off the back of that McLaren. That is not the easiest position to be in. And ooh, there you go. That is the danger here as they go into the braking zones. You see nothing but gray, you see nothing but spray, and then suddenly the rear bumper of the car ahead of you. And especially now in the toe on the straight, again, the same exact scenario. Angus Fender on the outside, Jack Noller on the inside. Into the braking zone they go, into the corner they go. Angus Fender again outside on the Mercedes Arena. I'm very much feeling deja vu, except there's no drifting going on right now. Oh, as here's a move from Angus Fender on the inside. A little bit of contact there as Jack Noller hits the rear of Angus Fender. But what a move at the end of the Mercedes Arena. Angus Fender got fed up of the same exact scenario and decided that this is the time for the move. Jack Noller leaves the door a little bit too open, and unfortunately, that's the position loss for Jack Noller, and Angus Fender has first place.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've seen Angus setting up that move pretty much every single lap. It was both textbook defending and textbook attacking from the two of them. That's something that the Mercedes-Benz Arena promotes, but just on that lap, I think Angus was actually a little bit further back going into turn one, but that meant that he could carry a bit more momentum around that turn two, and was right on Jack Noller's bumper as they went into that turn three. and you can very much just dive up the inside and put in that block pass if you feel so inclined, which is exactly what Angus did. And you can see now that he's pulling away, so that's how fast as that may be going his way on the next in the next couple of laps. But now we'll see what Harry and Jack, how these two battle and come up against each other.
Yeah, and I think this is a very important time for Angus Fender now. Has to use that pace. I mean, he had. We've seen that he has the pace over these two right now in these conditions. As oh, that's a drift from Harry Spears, able to keep it together though. Good recovery there. But yeah, we've seen that Angus Fender has the pace. Already put a second on Jack Miller at the last timing line there, and you know, it's gonna. You talked about how the strategy might be different for these drivers, and if Angus Fender decided to go with less fuel in the beginning, obviously we don't know that, but if that is what he decided, then this is very critical, and obviously those 15 minutes behind Jack Miller would have actually potentially cost him quite a bit.
Yeah, I think getting stuck behind, that's not going to help if he has gone for the lower fuel option. But we'll obviously see how that plays out when we get to the pit stops. But interestingly, Harry hasn't been able to sort of catch up to Jack too much in the last couple of laps. Maybe even now Jack has stopped focusing on Angus, he can pull away a little bit. But yeah, Angus seems to be pulling away just in his zone. Jack may have been knocked out of that a little bit, which perhaps affected that 1.2 second gap, as we see it go up to 1.6 seconds now. So yeah, we'll see what happens now with Angus seemingly pulling away from this pack. But again, we've assumed that no one's going to take tyres, but they might with putting the wear on these wets. They can still feel a lot worse by the end of the stint. So it'll be interesting to see if any of them do take those tyres or just go straight to the end.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be very interesting to see, especially once we approach, in the next 15 minutes, once we approach that early pit window. Yeah, obviously we did see a couple pit stops earlier on, mostly for damage. But it is interesting to see both of the other Bentleys, aside from Harry Spears, Shaw and Ishan Wells, all the way down, having taken their first pit stops already, as Tumanis looking for that fourth position, and the one holding it, Anna Langsdale Foster, a little bit deep there under the chicane. Tumanis actually gets a good run, but Anna Langsdale Foster defends to the inside of the hairpin. And the Porsche, not necessarily known for its straight line speed, might not be able to do much here on the straight. In the toe, however, able to keep up so far, as Anna Langsdale Foster goes to the inside to defend. Not quite alongside at the braking zone, so should be just fine as the cars go through turn one into the Mercedes arena. Very wide line there from McLaren, and able to keep it together. And it doesn't seem like we'll be seeing as aggressive of a move as Angus Fender's from Tumanis just yet, but it is interesting to see the only Porsche in the series as well now. We're seeing the singular cars, the Jason List's Ferrari and Tumanis' Porsche. It is nice to see a good variety of cars here in the championship.
Yeah, I think we always knew that the BMW was going to be popular with it being the newest car. A lot of the front engine drivers have come from Bentleys, Mercedes, and other of the other front engine cars like the Lexus as well, and gone into that new BMW. We obviously have a lot of McLarens. They seem to be pretty quick at the minute in this current sort of update of the game, this current version. But yeah, as you say, it's nice to see some of the previously very competitive cars, the Ferrari and the Porsche, on the grid, as we see Ramley getting close behind Mushtaq here now.
Yeah, I think Ramley had to avoid a couple incidents the first couple laps, which did drop him down quite a bit. Oh, goes a little bit deep there into Dunlop, maybe getting a bit caught out by the line of Mushtaq, and that's going to lose him quite a bit of time. We'll have to try and get that time back, as Cam Gold behind him will be trying to catch. just to note on certain, the penalties, the 10-second penalties. So 4 of them were pre-applied for previous races. So this would be, so these were the drivers 33, 76, 27, and 2, as these two go alongside Tumatis and Alexa Foster now into turn 1, and Alexa Foster able to keep it together in turn 1. As oh, that's the Porsche of Tumatis getting a little bit unstable there. I think perhaps caught out by the slower moving McLaren at the apex. And that's pretty textbook defending right there, as I believe that was the 27 of Haskell, a yellow flag there, has gone into the sand pit there, or into the grass rather, as the leaders go by, able to return onto the track now, and unfortunate incident there. But yeah, these penalties were actually applied for failing to grid. So these drivers received a penalty for qualifying, but failing to grid. And that's an interesting decision to make, to start from the pit lane and also cop a penalty for that as well, after, qualifying.
Yeah, I think, I don't know whether the drivers knew their rule book, but it was a rule that was brought in a few years ago. I remember, fun in fact, Nurburgring as well. I had a poor qualifying session, I was down in 15th, and I thought I don't want to be involved in that turn 1 anyway. And I was furiously messaging the stewards. You see, I think that was Haskell again.
Yeah,
so he seems to be struggling a little bit in these conditions. But messaging the stewards saying, can I start from the pit lane? And the reason why they've got that 10-second penalty is because if you don't grid after qualifying, you can actually, give people drive-throughs, because sometimes the game has some issues with recognising who's in the pits, who isn't, and you can get a penalty for being out of position when really you've done nothing wrong. So that 10 seconds is there to sort of try and persuade people not grid, but clearly it didn't stop these guys in these conditions. But thankfully we didn't see any drive-throughs today.
Yeah, thankfully not, but penalties either way. So 4 of those penalties for that, one was an incident, so the 301 Ishan Wells did receive a 10-second penalty for contact with the car 12, so that's Mushtaq. So that was at the end of, at the chicane, I believe, at the end of lap 1. So 10-second penalties all around at the bottom of the field, and those will be served on the first pit stop for all of these cars. As there goes Lodge, and that's getting a bit unsettled at the chicane, or maybe more than just a bit. Spins out onto the pit entry there. It doesn't look like he hit a wall, so there we go. Just goes a little bit deep, and just getting a bit unstable there as it crosses the curb. Yeah, avoids the wall, so that is good for Lodge there, able to avoid any kind of repairs just for now, as Romley now has caught up to Mushtaq, and that's Anna Langsdale Foster going very slow. Must have had an incident at the Schumacher S, as you see coming from the exit of Dunlop. Let's see what happened here. Goes onto the outside.
Yep.
Oh, just a little bit too much curb there, and that's how treacherous the wet conditions can be.
Yeah, in the dry, that curb is something that's very valuable to the drivers. Just to get that little bit of extra space on the entry into the Schumacher S and be able to take it almost flat in the dry, but in the wet, I think it's just unsettled the car a little bit too much going from those two surfaces, and yeah, unfortunately Anna paying the price there, but hopefully she'll get back up towards Simonis ahead of them, and we can see that battle carry on throughout the race.
Yeah, we'll see how much time was lost there. That was just about 4 or 5 seconds lost there for Anna, so not a massive cost, but obviously not exactly amazing for the podium fight there. Well, I say podium, it's more like 4th place, as Timon is now 13 seconds behind Harry Spears currently in 3rd place and in that podium. And in this train of 3 cars, Mushchak at the front of it, able to stay relatively close together. Now Cam Gold, we've seen can be extremely quick. Maybe not, we haven't seen him too much in the wet, but we know he can be very quick, and we know he can get a better result than 12th. Obviously, we'll have to serve that 10-second penalty later, but he's going to be looking to climb up the order as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting with these two ahead. Obviously, they're battling whether Cam can make his way through. Obviously, had that drive through at the start.
Oh, that's Isha
there from Isha. That could have been dangerous. I think, yeah, Lodge probably not feeling too comfortable with that one, but yeah, I can imagine it on the curb. Yeah, again.
Oh yeah,
curb.
just a little bit too much on the curb. Oh, and
I think that's
able to get
thing.
it stopped at least.
That's the thing in these conditions is the inside curbs in this game aren't so treacherous, especially here like at the Nürburgring, because there's a lot of slower speed corners, or you just simply wouldn't use the curb in the first place. But those outside curves are going to be the ones that are catching them out, because you're either on power or you're trying to get the car settled and you turn in. There's a little bit of a twitch there from Cam Gold as well going into the Schumacher S, like we saw from Anna Langsdale Foster a couple of laps ago. So I think it's something you've got to watch out for. There's a lot of AstroTurf and a lot of dodgy curbs around here, so we might see a few more sort of half spins from drivers like that, and let's hope that there's a slightly more sensible rejoin, perhaps.
Yeah, we're able to avoid an incident there, so that is good. But now Romley getting very close to Mushtak here into the chicane. Not really the place to make an overtaking move, and not going to happen this time around. But Mushtak, again, a little bit deep onto the entry of the chicane. Romley looks to the inside, has to stop very quickly as Cam Gold into the pits behind them. Now Romley has the run onto the straight. The BMW quite mediocre in its straight line speed, not really close enough to get a great toe here either. Has a look towards the inside. Mushtak leaving the door open, but just a little bit too far for any kind of move. And you were definitely seeing where these cars shine, and Mushtak able to keep that position so far. And I think that would be the first of our final pit stops, as Isha is in the pits as well, as Lee takes a little bit of an adventurous line through the chicane as well. So Isha taking his second pit stop for now. Relatively early, but an hour left. That car can easily run the rest of the race.
Yeah, of course, it's not going to be an issue for fuel. They might be changing their tyres after that half spin. That's obviously the wets we've been saying can go for that hour and a half, but if you have an incident and you do get those flat spots or maybe even all 4 tyres, then that might be something you're looking to do. I'm not sure so far how long the pit stop has been, but we'll be able to tell exactly what's happened when Isha leaves the pit lane.
Yeah, just to not able to see that just now. Now I can check. It was a 35-second pit stop, so that potentially would have been tires, as Haskell is off once again, able to get back onto the track. Yeah, so 35-second pit stops. Actually, looking at some of these pit stops earlier, a 35-second pit stop for Shaw, which is most likely new tires. So that is new tires for the rest of the race. Potentially fixing some flat spots there as well. But interestingly enough, Faruqi currently in 14th after taking his first pit stop, also a 35-second pit stop, and we know that there wasn't really any contact with Faruqi, so there wouldn't have been much damage to repair, maybe just a little bit, those couple of seconds. So that's new tires as well. The rest of them are mostly damage repairs and potentially new tires as well, as Josh Lodge had a 1 minute and 25-second pit stop. So yeah, no, it seems like everything is relatively good, with new tires as well, and yeah, it'll be very interesting to see the second pit stops, as the obviously the first couple pit stops have mostly been as a result of incidents. So yeah, I'll be watching mostly for the midfield once they start pitting, whether tires are the optimal strategy or not.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see now, Angus Fender has pulled out a 5-second gap to Jack Noller behind, who has also pulled out a 2-second gap to Harry Spears. So these guys separating out a little bit now. They've settled into the race and can just sort of do their own thing. So you know, it'll be interesting to see whether they close up near the end or whether this is going to be the status quo for the rest of the event.
Yeah, I think once we hit the pit stops, we'll be seeing some amount of variety. We were used to seeing this lull maybe a bit later in the race normally, but you know, looking back at last season, we saw this happen quite a lot, where the leading pack would just effectively maintain gaps until that last pit stop, where one of the drivers would trigger a pit stop cycle or potentially a double pit stop, as Jack Noller used to do quite a couple times in that last season. So I think that's the kind of stage we're at right now. Angus Fender obviously looking to build as big of a gap as possible, but and is lapping a little bit faster, but not fast enough to really build a massive gap. And similarly, it seems Harry Spears not really falling behind all that much, but also seemingly content with staying that couple of seconds behind. And one thing we have to consider, it is considerably easier to drive when you're 2 seconds behind as opposed to half a second behind in these kind of conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you haven't got the spray, the effect of dirty air is a little less. As you can see, Harry Spears there got a relatively clear view of the road ahead. And at the end of the day, look, we've still got just over an hour left of this race, so there's no point in showing all your hands now and then being caught up at the end or not having the pace or taking out the tyres. You know, this is a long race. There's still an hour left to go for these guys up in front.
Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of look at the overall race right now, we're still seeing a couple of battles going on, but I think most drivers seem to have settled in for the long run so far. Tsunoda is currently holding 4th position, Anna Langsdale-Foster after the incident in 5th, Jason List in 6th, Jim and Lin 7th, Calf Bud currently racing his first race of the season as well. Obviously was in the commentary. Actually, no, did he race last race? Not entirely sure. Either way, currently in 8th place, which is always good to see in the top 10. And Fletcher on the 9th position, and Mushtaq in 10th. I think no major surprises. Nathan Carey having taken his first pit stop, and Furuki also. We're expecting to see them back up into the top 10 after the pit stop cycles have gone through. But you know, your driver to watch today was Anna Langsdale-Foster, and so far she's well, aside from that one incident, a relatively good race. But what can she do now to catch Tsunonis, or is this a strategy game at this point?
I think at the minute she just needs to settle down after that incident. She clearly has, you know, that gap has stayed around 5.2 seconds. She lost another second after the incident, but you know, since then the gap has sort of stabilised, just keeping within that 5 to 6 second range, and then you know, maybe close to the end of the race they can start to turn up the heat a little bit. As you look, they've closed 4/10 at the start of this lap, so it'll be interesting to see how she decides to play out. And what happens to Simonis. You know, I think one thing that's shouldn't be underestimated here is just keeping that pressure on the car ahead, because you know, pressure will lead to mistakes, and here so like more so than ever in the wet and at this track. There's not much room for error once you go off the circuit. So keeping that pressure on throughout the race, you know, not making sure that Simonis can't just sit back and cruise to the end of the race. So I think that's what she'll be looking to do until the end of the event.
Yeah, definitely. And we did see Romley into the pits as well. We'll lose at a couple positions, I believe. So obviously that fight with Mushtaq wasn't really going anywhere. So this is a relatively normal time to take that first pit stop. I think we're kind of used to seeing the first set of pit stops in this hour mark. A little bit late now for most of the midfield to do their first pit stop. Um, well, maybe not too late, but yeah, we're used to seeing this kind of window now start to open up, and I think this is where this is about the time when these tires aren't as fresh anymore. They're still good, still very good, and not usually a problem unless you've messed up your pressures. But this is about the time when you really do start feeling them for the first time. You don't have as much grip as you did in the first couple laps of the race, and it'll now be interesting to see whether any of these drivers want to spring for that early pit stop. Maybe go for an undercut, and whether drivers are going to change tires or not. I mean, we've seen so far Faruqi, Lodge, Lee, and Shaw change tires. Everyone else so far hasn't, and it's really hard to call right now what's going to happen later on in the race.
Yeah, I think all the drivers who have taken tyres this early on, they have all been involved in sort of one of those half spins, so maybe, you know, flat spots were the reason for that change. If you're going to change tyres, then I don't think we'll see that until maybe the 45 minute to half an hour to go sort of mark, because, you know, otherwise if you're having tyre problems at this point in the race, then you're just gonna start having them, you know, in another 40 minutes or so. So, you know, to try and split the race in half is usually the best way to go with tyres. But I think, yeah, unless we have those half spins, I don't think we'll see any tyre changes. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see as we go into this sort of phase. I know particularly it happens with the dry tyres that, you know, between sort of the middle part of the stint, the tyres do sort of slow down a little bit, and then they start to get the energy back into them. So yeah, I think a similar thing will happen with these wets. So that might be, you know, why we're seeing a bit of a lull at the minute.
Yeah, and speaking of that little lull, up at the front, a 7-second gap now, almost 8 between Angus Fender and Jack Miller. So we're getting to a point where it seems like the lighter fuel load at this point, obviously, but all these drivers fueled quite a bit of quite a bit of fuel in the car, able to run this long. But yeah, they're very that gap is growing very quickly now, so we might be approaching that first tank of fuel as Romley now looks to make a move on Lee. Lee obviously having not yet pitted. Romley coming out of the pits just a couple of laps ago, and we'll be trying to get by as quickly as he can. The Mercedes looking, well, not as comfortable right now.
Yeah, I think Lee is, I'm not sure what their input device is, but you can tell just from their movements that it's certainly not a wheel. And that's, you know, to be driving around in these conditions is far more tricky on a pad or even keyboard and mouse than obviously it is on a wheel, a lot of them with force feedback. So, you know, this is going to be tricky for Lee. It'll be interesting to see how Romley sort of attacks this and finds a way past.
Yeah, and there we see the way these inputs are transferred when you're not using the wheel. It's very static. It's very well. I wish I could move my hands that quick. And you know, it's a difficult situation to find yourself in these kind of conditions. But here we also see the spray ahead, so it is also forcing Romley to be a little bit more careful. As even I get a little bit spooked as that car just appears from the middle of the spray, as Lee going a little bit wide there. Romley perhaps trying to look at that inside line, not able to get through anywhere. And Cam Gold behind these two, just looking for that opportunity to make a move of his own. Interestingly enough, Max, Cam Gold currently holding the past the speed trap as well at 237 kilometers per hour. 2 kilometers higher than anyone else except for Angus Fender and Jack Noller. So quite close.
Yeah, that's. I believe the speed trap is going into the first chicane, as we see. I think the score is either in the pit lane or on the inside of the turn, the last turn again. But yeah, the speed trap is at the end of the back straight, so either having bigger balls, to use a popular phrase, going through that kink on the back straight, or just getting a really good exit there, or maybe running downforce, less downforce than everyone else, in which case that would be certainly an interesting strategy on a day like today.
Definitely an interesting one at that. Yeah, just looking at this battle as, oh, that's Lee wide, and that's Romley through, and Cam Gold now has a look as well. Not exactly an overtaking position in the wet. We'll have to have a look into the chicane. Actually has a look on down the inside, thinks better of it very wisely, as Lee has, well, not exactly an optimal line, has a little bit of I think that was maybe Durham internet happening there. Hopefully Jason List able to stay in the race and doesn't get Durhamed. But so far so good, still holding 6th position, just a little bit of a glitch there, able to get back onto the circuit properly. And yeah, that's Cam Gold through as well, so Adam Lee had a little bit of an incident there, I believe, and had to let Cam go through, and I believe that is Ish Shaw has also disconnected as well, as Lee really struggling right now.
I saw Ish going off at the Schumacher S on the exit, so I imagine that was a bit too much curb and a bit of a spin. I think that was enough for him today, so that's a shame to see Ish go. Obviously they'd taken their 2 pit stops, so it would have been interesting to see how they'd come back through the field with the drivers ahead of them taking those stops, but yeah, something we're not going to see today, I think. Yeah, not the day for Ish, so sad to not see that wonderful livery on that Bentley going round anymore, but yeah, tough day for them out there.
Yeah, definitely not the best of days for Ish, and seemingly for any of the Bentleys, considering Harry Spears' relative performance, not really the best of days for him as well so far. Obviously still very close to close to Jack Noller and relatively close to Angus Fender, about 12 seconds ahead. Just approaching 52 minutes completed of the race, just past 51 here, as Josh Lodge goes for his first pit stop. We'll potentially have that 10-second penalty to serve. We'll see if he decides to do so. I think, yeah, this is probably a scheduled pit stop as we're approaching the halfway point of the race.
Yeah, I think that's the preferred strategy in the dry and in the wet. So yeah, I think we're going to start to see a lot of drivers come into the pits now. It'll be interesting to see where someone like Faruqi or Nathan Carey come out after those pit stops, obviously taking that first stop quite early on. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can jump Oliver Fletcher, Cav Budd, and Adil Mushtaq up there.
Yeah, definitely. And it does look like these gaps have mostly stabilized for now for the cars that are on track and have chosen not to pit. And Cam Gold now very, very close. Romley did get by Cam Gold there, so they were definitely either side by side or something along those lines earlier on the lap. And Cam Gold now having to look to make that move happen again. Yeah, it's we're approaching that point where effectively just waiting for the pit stop cycle. I think right now none of the cars are able to be that close together aside from these two, and it's understandable considering if you are at relatively the same pace and you're yet to do your pit stops, it might not even be smart to lose that much time fighting the car ahead of you when you could just maybe wait to make that move in the pits, especially considering how risky it is to follow a car very closely with the spray and potential errors in braking. And here we go, Angus Fender, the first of the leading pack into the pits, had a 10-second gap to Jack Miller prior to pitting. We'll be watching to see what happens here, whether it's going to be tires, whether it's just going to be fuel, and whether it's going to trigger any kind of reaction from the other two podium contenders.
Yeah, I think, oh, as Faruqi's gone off there, so that's not going to help them jump anyone in these pit stops, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Angus comes out, whether he'll be in any traffic and how that'll affect his race. As we see a replay now of what happened to Faruqi again, yeah, just
that outside curb.
One slight wheel. Yeah, that outside curb, a little wheel there, and just, yeah, you lose all the support as you turn into that left-hander. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Angus comes out in any traffic. I don't think he has. He's managed to find a gap.
He's mostly
helped by,
cleared.
I think Samanis pitting.
Yeah, mostly cleared. A 19-second pit stop, so that is fuel, and that's enough fuel to go basically to the end of the race. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Timana is now in the pits as well, so Anna Langsdorff-Foster inherits that 4th place, and we'll see if that is going to be any kind of a reaction, if there's going to be any kind of a reaction based on that. And yeah, currently Angus Fender still holding on to that Simhound fastest lap of the race, and Cam Gold now looking for that move at Dunlop, not able to get by the very stable M4 BMW, able to stay ahead for now. And I think this battle is going to be going on for a little bit as well. And yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see if this triggers any reactions. We're now seeing that first pack go through the through the last hairpin, and no, it doesn't look like anyone's pitted. No, Harry Spears has pitted, I believe, unless he's just going very slow. No, I'm pretty sure he's just going very slow off the exit. So yeah, apologies there. Yeah, no, it doesn't trigger any pit stops yet, and we'll have to see if this pays off for Angus Fender.
Yeah, I think this middle pit stop, this first pit stop for a lot of drivers is just, you know, pretty set in concrete. I stop at halfway through or close enough to, as we just crossed the halfway mark there. And then it'll be that later stop where we start to see a little bit of differentiation as Angus struggling to get past down and Langsdorff-Foster here. Doesn't quite have the pace in that BMW. Anna's not letting him through. She's not defending, but yeah, in the end it's quite easy for Angus just up the inside. But I don't think Langsdorff-Foster was exactly letting him through there. Just maybe.
No, definitely didn't defend though. Yeah, and I think the we talked about it previously, and we talked about balance, car balance before, and there you see one of the factors is that the straight line speed of the BMW M4 it's something, and it's definitely not amazing, and we saw a bit of that there. While I was able to get a pretty good exit out of the hairpin, Anna Langsdorff-Foster just able to stay ahead, and almost had to let Angus through by staying on the outside, opening that door. So, and speaking of opening that door, Cam Gold able to get through Romley there, as Romley goes a little bit deep on the exit of Dunlop, and that's Cam Gold through, and very much sending thanks over for that one. Takes 13th position, obviously pit stops pending. As here we go, Nathan Carey into the pits as well, so his second pit stop, and I think he's the first of the middle pack to take his second pit stop, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Harry Spears now in the pits, had actually lost quite a bit of time previously. I saw he was about 6 seconds behind Jack Miller. So he'd actually been losing quite a bit of time to Jack Miller in the lead as well. So we'll be watching his pit stop to see what how long he's stationary, what kind of a strategy he's looking at. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think,
it's interesting.
yeah, I think the gap was hovering around that 3-second mark. Jack maybe a little bit quicker every lap, but then there was a mistake, as we saw coming out of that final hairpin, which then put Harry back a little bit as he heads back out onto the track. And
Quick pit stop, 11 seconds.
Yeah, ahead of Angus Fender, by the looks of things on the chart at the minute. Is that right, if that was an 11-second pit stop?
No, I believe the gap was bigger than that. Yeah, so Angus Fender is still ahead by about 70 seconds. So Harry Spears was
Yes.
too far behind, so that was a timing line glitch there.
Yeah, my screen just wasn't updating. I was a little bit confused by that, but
yeah, so that's Daniel Langstaff Foster also now into pits, and this is critical for the battle with Simonis.
as we
And a
can
21
see,
second
whereabouts
pit stop.
Simonis on track, yes.
Simonis is
Simonis
through
heading into
actually
turn
already.
1.
Yeah, so
quite a way ahead.
that is interesting to see, because that is more than that 5 seconds that the gap was before the pit stops. Mushtaq also now into the pits. So Timon is able to have very good pace, as the gap is 9 seconds now. So quite a few seconds between Timonis and Alexa Foster there. And yeah, Timon is probably happy with that undercut working so far. But obviously, we are still waiting for that final set of pit stops as well. And that'll be the one that really defines things. I think Jack Noah also really waiting for that pit stop to really see where the lead of the race is going to shake up. Cathbot now, as a result of the pit stops, inherits 6th place, about 7.5 seconds from Jimmy Lin. I think a relatively consistent race from both Cav and Jimmy, just holding on to those positions mostly on pace, and I would almost hesitate to say a boring race for those two so far.
Yeah, I think not many highlights from the two of them so far, which is maybe how you want it in a race like this. Just keep going round, try not to spin on the outside curbs or anything like that. Just get it to the end, and then you'll probably come out with a good position, which is what we said at the start of the race was, if you just keep it on the island, then you're gonna get a decent result.
Yeah, definitely. And here we see Jack and Ower healthy lead so far, and yeah, he's been able to put up good lap times. Angus Fender a 10th quicker last lap, so that gap as it stands will be maintained, and we'll have to keep watching and monitoring these lap times and when Jack Noah decides to pit. But considering the fact that these first pit stops at the halfway point of the race, no one really took tires by the looks of it. I think your call of there being no tire changes for any of these drivers will probably be the last one, as that would have been the time to take tires if they were going to do so.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether anyone comes in with around like half an hour to go or something, maybe take some fresh tyres and try and use that tyre advantages to make up that 30-second gap, but I don't think that would be the wise thing to do, because obviously a lot of these people have taken 12 or even 20 seconds worth of fuel on board, so to have another 30-second pit stop just doesn't really make too much sense. So I think, yeah, we're settled in for a no tyre change. The 2-stop race obviously is required with the fuel stops, and yeah, I think it's just a case of who's better on the day.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing that. Angus Fender now actually had a slow lap last lap, almost 7/10 slower than Jack Miller, and cutting through some traffic. Obviously, that is going to happen. But with Jack Miller still yet to pit, it is going to be something that we have to watch. And right now, Jack Miller has quite a lot of clear air. As we go into a replay of launch, see what's happened here. Bit of a drift. Oh, and that's an overcorrection there at the chicane. Able to require quite decent. It didn't seem like they lost too much time, but yeah, that chicane, it can be very deadly in these conditions.
Yeah, I mean it's deadly in the dry, so you know those curbs are even more vicious in the wet like this. And you know we saw earlier when someone went wide that you think, okay, right, I've managed to save it, I managed to keep it out of the barrier, and then as you rejoin the track, you get that sort of thump from the high curb, which can always spin you around. So it's a tricky little beast, that one.
Yes, I think Angus Fender perhaps not the best experience there, lapping Mushtaq around the outside of Dunlop. As oh, that's Fletcher around at T1, and that's a Lamborghini moment right there. Yet to pit for Fletcher as well. Let's see what's happened there. Not gonna hit an outside curb at least. Turns in. Oh, and that's just a little bit too sharp there. Oh, and that's the throttle. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate for Oliver Fletcher. And we know that is the danger there. If you go too far onto the inside, the car will bounce. That in itself is fine, but then you combine that with an addition of a lot of throttle and a car with not necessarily the best traction control system and a wet track, a heavy wet track at that. And as a result, the rear overtakes you and the car is around. But luckily Fletcher able to get away without hitting anything, and that's always a good thing. And here we go, Nathan Carey and Dylan Mushtaq as Mushtaq takes a wide line, leaves the door wide open for Nathan Carey. Now almost up the inside, Nathan Carey not able to get through, Mushtaq able to defend so far. And yeah, I think the choice of line there for Mushtaq, not necessarily the best one, left the door wide open. But here we go, Nathan Carey deep in the spray, has a look down the inside, not able to get through just yet. Now Dunlop hairpin is the next potential overtaking opportunity. Requires a good launch from Carey here, not able to get the best one. Mushtaq able to actually get a better exit there. So no overtaking opportunity just yet for Nathan. Misses the braking point just a little bit, almost goes into the back of Mushtaq. And you know that's the threat when you're in the spray of the car ahead of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know it's more difficult to see your braking markers, and you know that braking marker is obviously slightly different compared to normal. So yeah, well avoided to not hit the McLaren there. And but yeah, it's just unfortunate that's obviously happened. As we see, I thought I got very confused and very excited there. I saw Harry Spears in the BMW and I was like, oh my god, it's Angus Fender. But no, it's just Nathan Carey being lapped by the Loughborough driver.
Yeah, that's an interesting place to make that move. A little bit of bravery going nearly alongside into that fastest corner on the circuit. Cam Gold now just behind Nathan Carey. Gonna be looking at making a move himself as well. And yeah, that little excursion, well, not really an excursion, that extra braking or lack of at the Dunlop hairpin does open up the opportunity for Cam Gold to get a little bit closer there, as the yellow flag thrown up by Haskell. Struggling a little bit at that same corner actually. Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience for the beginners today, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you've got to have your first competitive wet race at some point. You just happen to be at this circuit, as you know. Just be glad that it's not somewhere like Bathurst or maybe even Zolder, because that would be a nightmare. I mean, why would you ever do a wet race at night at Zolder? That would be ridiculous. But you know, a wet day at the Nürburgring, nothing could be more appropriate. So, but yeah, a difficult one for the new drivers today. But so far they seem to be handling okay.
Yeah, the only thing we're missing from a typical day at the Nürburgring is a lot of fog. Fortunately, we don't have to have that, as Nathan Carey getting very close to Mustak once again. A better line from Nathan Carey, but was able to, or was forced to stay behind Mustak. Not really any room for a car to overtake there, and we'll have to look at a different opportunity. And yeah, I think we're seeing Mustak struggle in some of these corners, but Nathan Carey not really able to get the setup for the overtake right, and unfortunately, it seems to be the chicanes where the McLaren's struggling the most, whereas that's not really an overtaking opportunity for Carey.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, as we saw through the Schumacher S, it's Nathan keeps catching Mustak's mid-corner through those high-speed S's and also the chicane at the end of the lap, which is, you know, just the wrong time to be catching, and then, you know, suffering a poorer exit as a result. If he was just a little bit further back that previous lap through the Schumacher S, then maybe they could have got them into the next corner, but that wasn't so. But I think we could see a move set up here as Mustak leaves the door open, but no, shuts it a little bit there. Good car placement once again we've seen through the Mercedes-Benz arena. Interestingly, there's different strategies to some of the other ones we've seen before, like sticking to the middle of the road rather than being a bit more aggressive and sticking to the right or the left, as we see Carey put a nose down the
that's
inside.
the door
He's
open.
Get it stopped.
Ooh, a little
Brilliant
bit of
move from
contact.
Nathan Carey there. And does he manage to get the exit through this next corner? Good move there from Nathan Carey. I think maybe took Mustak a little bit by surprise. So as we see again, you know, setting him up as they left the Mercedes-Benz arena, and yeah, a little bit conservative there from the McLaren driver, but then also turning in. So as we're now subterranean mode, but yeah, I think completely taken by surprise there, Mustak. So a good move from Carey. We see Gold trying to follow him through now as well.
Yeah, definitely surprised there, and a good move, and that does allow Nathan Carey to kind of run away now, or has to try and run away, as Cam Gold, the next one to look at that position held by Mustak, and see a little bit of a wider line. And we know these Lamborghinis are very quick on a straight line here today, especially so when in the toe. However, going into a chicane, is this an overtaking opportunity for Cam Gold? Has a look to the inside, thinks better of it. Now through the chicane they go. A little bit too much curve there for Mustak, and that's the current unsettled, and Cam Gold with the position. Has actually, Mustak having a little bit more of a spin. Oh no, the wet grass.
Oh no,
and that's a rejoin. Jimmy Lin takes contact there, tries to lap Mustak, and a head-on or T-bone contact there, as that's going to be a penalty for Mustak. Jimmy Lin not really able to avoid that. Into the pits he goes right away for his final pit stop, and oh, there we go. So just a little bit too much throttle on the grass, cuts across to get back onto the other side to try and recover, and again just a little bit too much throttle, and oh, there's Jimmy Lin, not a chance to avoid that one. And that's an unfortunate bit of contact and quite a bit of damage, most likely, as well.
Yeah, no chance of avoiding that for Jimmy Lin, unfortunately, especially annoying coming up behind a lapped car. But we saw, I think, again, sort of psychological battling there with Cam Gold just showing a nose up the inside there, no intention of making a move. There's no way, even if he was in a monster truck, that he was going to be able to make that move from that distance with those curves. But especially in the Lamborghini, but just showing that nose up the inside to Mustak, and that sent Mustak a little bit wide through the chicane, and obviously then, you know, the events that we just saw unfold occurred. So unfortunately, Jimmy Lin, the innocent bystander and innocent victim of that, but yeah, I think Mustak's going to have a drive-through coming his way. Oh yeah, drive-through there.
Yep, there you go.
I assume that's from race
control.
control.
Off there as well. Was that Haskell? Yeah, no, that's a very, very quick response from race control. Obviously, not many incidents today. That is actually only the only the second incident in the race. The rest were the qualifying and failing to grid incidents. So yeah, not a very healthy looking front there for Jimmy Lin, and the drive through for Mushtaq will have to be served in the next couple laps. So Jimmy Lin unfortunately hasn't used his pit stops yet, so we'll be able to at least get that repaired if he chooses to very quickly. As Fruki also has taken his last pit stop, so we're currently in 9th position. And Jason List also going to take his first pit stop. And yeah, actually Jimmy Lin chooses to stay out. Let me just look at his lap time. His last lap time was a 2:10.8, with his best lap time being a 2:08.3 previously. So about 2 seconds behind his best, but I'm not entirely sure what the relative to prior to the contact was, but obviously not enough to pit immediately. So we'll be seeing how long he chooses to stay with this damage and whether he chooses to repair it at all.
Yeah, I mean, in the dry it would certainly be something you notice, especially on the McLaren, having that front end damage. It is so aero dependent, that car. But you know, in the wet, it's maybe not affecting the car quite so much because you've already got quite a bit of understeer from obviously the track being in a worse condition and obviously using different tyres. But yeah, that front end damage might not be causing as much of an issue as it would do in the dry. So I think Lynn will probably just carry on as he was and then come into the pits and in his expected pit stop, which you know, we'll see whether Cav can catch them up on in these next couple of laps. I'm not sure how the deltas come down, but yeah, I think Cav will be smelling a bit of blood now and chasing him down.
I can tell you Cav was about a second and a half quicker on that last lap, so it will be very, very close. Whether these drivers are going to be fighting on track, actually next lap will be when Cav catches Jimmy Lin, if neither chooses to pit, which I wouldn't be surprised by. We are at that point where those first pit stops are generally made. Interesting thing to note about those first pit stops, Jack Norris actually pulled a bit more of a gap to Angus Fender, and while it's still well within the pit stop window, I'd say well within, if Jack Noir has a quick pit stop for his next pit stop, it'll actually be enough to keep hold of that first place. So whatever strategy Jack has decided to do here with that longer fuel run, keep in mind we are now an hour 5 into this stint, so this is max fuel in the tank for Jack Noir. If he's able to have a quick 2 pit stops, he'll actually potentially keep hold of that lead, especially considering the gap now, 42 seconds. Harry Spears, previously, his pit stop was 41 seconds. So assuming a very quick 11 seconds stopped for Jack Noir, which seems to be the standard for the refill for the end of the race, might actually be less for Jack considering he's now ran this long. He could potentially be holding that first position even after the pit stop cycles.
Yeah, and there's a few things. Obviously, in the rain, we tend to be on the accelerator less, the car's going slower, even using different engine modes. So, you know, fuel consumption may be down. And like you say, a quicker pit stop at this point, it's about 0.3 seconds per litre of fuel that you need. And with 23 minutes left to go, a safe sort of fuel level for the McLaren is probably around 45 litres. So, you know, obviously that will be split across two pit stops. So it'll be interesting to see how Angus has split his pit stops and fuel levels and how that affects the end of this race. Yeah,
definitely. We're approaching 100 and an hour and 6 minutes on the step timer right now. So these cars, keep in mind the 3 cars currently, Jack Noir, Jimmy Lin, Cav Bud, all of them on on this long stint right now. They've been relatively consistent. Obviously, Jimmy Lin now forced to lose quite a bit of time as a result of the contact and the laps after that. Now has to defend a little bit of leaving there at the beginning of the straight. Will defend. Actually, no, kind of a little bit too far going into the first braking zone. I say a little bit too far. That is a little bit of a dive. Jimmy Lin giving that room, not wanting to cause contact there and potentially a spin, and Cav Bud with a brave move, not working out there. But obviously we'll be trying that again as he's lapping that much quicker in these last couple of laps. Half a second on that last one, but obviously was already getting close to Jimmy Lin, and we've seen how the spray can affect these cars.
Yeah, I think it's Cav looks like he will be making the move in the next couple of laps. So I think this long pit
stop.
stops.
Laps.
Yeah, I think these guys going on this longer time to their first pit stop are going to be spending as little time in the pits as possible. That's the way to, well, for Jack Nolan potentially win this race today. So, obviously Jimmy Lin having that damage, that's going to take away from that. But there seems to be a big gap behind Cav, so perhaps take the damage, repair after Cav gets past. But yes, setting up a move here now from Cav, maybe we'll go for it into the chicane.
Yeah, not really working out. I think with the way Cav is driving right now, and we saw this with Mushtaq and Carey as well, the BMW versus the McLaren, a duel we've been used to seeing all throughout the season with different drivers, just due to the sheer number of them. We are seeing that the McLaren is struggling at the chicanes a lot more, as, oh, that's a little bit wide there, Jimmy Lin. Cav Bud takes the opportunity to go to the inside now alongside. They will go on the straight. Jimmy Lin with a better exit though, able to have that straight line speed, has to defend to the inside. Cav Bud moving away from the toe. Jimmy Lin in the middle of the track, into the braking zone they go. And Cav Bud looking for that switchback. Jimmy Lin quite wide, but still has the inside going into the Mercedes arena. Both cars giving each other racing room. And now they go into that second part of the arena. Cav Bud just slightly ahead, but on the outside. Jimmy Lin into the braking zone. Almost forces Cav Bud wide. Now Cav has the inside. Will be looking to make the move. Still alongside they go. Away from the Mercedes arena. Jimmy Lin on the inside now into the braking zone, past the graveyard of cones. Still has the inside, still alongside Cav Bud now. Again, this is we've seen this before at Nürburgring. Very close side-by-side racing. Now into the Dunlop hairpin. Jimmy Lin with a better exit off the corner before able to stay onto the inside. Cav Bud perhaps looking for another switchback, not able to do so, and Jimmy Lin stays ahead for now.
Yeah, excellent from Jimmy Lin there. That was important for him to get the run down to the Dunlop hairpin. As Jack Nolan takes his first pit stop, and there goes Angus Fender just right there. He's tantalisingly close, but just behind. We'll see how Jack responds now he's got that car right in front of him. But yeah, Jimmy Lin needed to get that exit out of the corner, going down to the Dunlop hairpin to cut across and keep that inside line for the hairpin, and that was crucial to him staying ahead, I think, for this extra lap or two.
Yeah, definitely, and we're now approaching, well, an hour 11 minutes for these two. Jack and Noah obviously just pitted, so these two the only ones yet to pit, and this stint is long. And this yeah, oh, there we go. Jimmy Lin now into the pits. Cav Bud going out for one more lap most likely. And yeah, going back to the lead battle then, Angus Fender pit stop earlier was a 19-second pit stop. Jack Miller a 14-second pit stop. So that gap, that 43-second gap that I talked about, just was not enough. And Angus Fender able to stay a couple seconds ahead of the off of the pit stops. Now we are still waiting for one more cycle of pit stops, so we'll be seeing what the drivers choose to do. It's not unusual for Jack Miller to do 2 pit stops in 2 laps, especially when it comes to these close races. Now with 18 minutes left to go of the race, that could be a strategy we're seeing, and yeah, it's a very interesting situation.
Yeah, I think based off my loose calculation that I did a second ago, when I was talking about how long it takes to fuel the car, based off of how long Jack's pit stop was there, he's going to have to take just the 1 litre in this pit stop that he takes now. I think it's going to be a splash and dash. It'll be interesting to see whether Angus needs to do the same, or whether he needs a few more litres there. But yeah, I think this will be, we're barely going to see him stop. It's going to be F1 levels kind of pit stops, just as long as he hits his marks. This is crucial for Jack Miller if he wants to try and win this race, to hit those marks, and that's something that's difficult at the best of times in the dry, and in the wet it's something that they're not necessarily used to. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, we're watching this pit stop. Jimmy Lynn's pit stop was 16 seconds, so that is no damage repairs there, as Jack Miller actually has the second pit box as well. So very good pit stop there, very quick.
There,
that was 6 seconds stationary, able to get an exit there, and we'll be watching to see if any of the other leading contenders will go into the pits. So Jack Miller, oh, and that was a previous incident for Cam Gold, and that's at the chicane. A little bit too much on the first part of the chicane, and that's the Lamborghini around. And yeah, that's rather unfortunate. But able to keep it out of the wall, which is very important, as Jack Miller going through some traffic here. So just looking at these gaps, Harry Spears is effectively out of the running, barring a major catastrophe for Angus Fender and Jack Miller, or alternatively a 2-second pit stop, which would be rather impressive. But effectively, Harry Spears is secured in that 3rd position for now. Obviously, we have seen crazier things happen, and we'll be watching that very, very closely.
I think
no pit stops just yet.
Yeah, we can see, talking about the battles near the top, is that Semanis seems to be secure in getting that 4th place at the minute, with List now in between them and Langsdale Foster. So it's all gone a bit downhill for Langsdale Foster, which is a shame for them today. I'll be sure not to pick them as my driver to watch for the next round, so I don't give them the commentator's curse. But yeah, a good result so far for Semanis on his first race back in this new season. Cav Bud's doing well up there. Obviously, still needs to take those 2 pit stops, but yeah, I don't think this is over up at the top. It'll be interesting to see what Angus does with this pit stop. Again, similar to Jack, he's going to have to hit those marks. Otherwise, Nola could stay in front. And with only 14 minutes to go, we saw him at the start of this race. If he can get ahead of Angus, and he'll be able to keep him behind for those 15 minutes. We saw it at the start. We may well see it again.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just to kind of look at the 75-minute stint from Cav Bud as he goes for another lap, and this is, I mean, obviously the car is very economical. It is a brand new car. You want it to, well, as race cars go anyway, very economical. As Fletcher goes it for his last pit stop. But yeah, I mean, I am rather surprised. We knew that these cars can do 70 minutes in the wet, no problem, with a full tank. But to run 75 minutes and to run on pace for that is quite good. And it does mean that these next 2 pit stops for Cav Bud are going to be, well, the definition of a splash and dash, where that last bit of fuel, that last 25 liters of, actually less than that, about 25 liters of fuel, it is just going to be that, and that last pit stop is just 1 liter fuel. So So it'll be interesting to see if Cav decides to do them on consecutive laps, or whether there's some kind of deeper strategy aside from run as long as he can here.
Yeah, I think maybe he's just trying to, after that Lin pit stop, trying to make sure that he comes out ahead. We've seen that Lin hasn't fixed that damage, so even though he is slower, then Cav will be trying to build that gap. So we'll see how they shake out. At the end of this, I imagine Cav will overtake him in these pit stops. But yeah, so we see Simonis now here going round. He's been secure as he goes a little bit wide there, but yeah, nothing too hairy. Just a case of bringing it home now, I think.
Yeah, so right now Angus Fender currently the fastest man on track, a 2:06.1 the last lap, 2:06.2 for Jack Noller. So Angus Fender building that gap ever so slightly. Obviously, both will have to deal with a little bit of traffic as far as I can tell. Harry Spears a couple tenths slower than both of them, as Ishan Wells around there, struggling to get back onto track. A little bit of a little bit of wheel spin there on the rears, as Cavbud now finally in the pits. Oh, that started quite early, and yeah, just trying to get back on track, planting that throttle. Well, we know that it's not necessarily the best option in the Bentley in general, let alone in the wet. So yeah, that's Cavbud into the pits and out as well. A very, very quick 9-second pit stop from Cavbud. So yeah, running for a long time actually quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean we've seen the strategy before, like you said earlier in the stream. Jack Noller is a fan of this, running long in the double pit stop, and we've seen Cav, use it to great effect today, as he comes up quite far ahead of Lin after that initial pit stop. But yeah, obviously there's still one more to go, and there could be different strategies going on. With 10 minutes left, obviously there's a limited amount they're going to have to do. But as we see Harry Spears come in for their final pit stop, so yeah, we'll see what he does here. It's not going to have too much of an effect on the race either way, I don't think, unless Fender Fender misses his marks. But yeah, a solid performance from Spears, I think. At the minute, he's losing the lead in the championship, which he'll probably be annoyed about. But yeah, Angus Fender and Jack Noller, they're both part of some pretty damn good teams in BS competition, and Jack working with the Williams Esports Academy. So Harry's got nothing to be ashamed of in this race today.
Yeah, all three drivers used to be used to being at the very, very top of the world in these kind of competitions. Obviously fighting amongst each other effectively in their own little league here in the BUSR. I was gonna say that it could be a potentially interesting strategy for Harry Spears to take new tires and potentially go for that Simhound fastest lap of the race. But no, it does look like he's out very... Oh no, never mind. He did take new tires. Apologies, I was looking at the wrong menu there. So a 32-second pit stop. So that is tires for Harry Spears. Obviously had the gap to Simonis, and he's going to be looking to take that Simhound fastest lap from Angus Fender. 2:05.5 is the time to beat.
Yeah, and I believe, obviously, we're talking about the championship. I think this season it's 2 points that come with that fastest lap. So that is an incentive, obviously, for Harry, as well as those Simhound gloves and or shoes, depending on what he's missing from his outfit so far. I think it'll just be a case of what colour he wants to pick at the end of the season. But Angus has still got that fastest lap at the minute, so we'll see whether Harry can nick that off him in these last sort of 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, and talking about Harry's potential missing outfits. If you want to augment your sim racing gear, obviously head over to simhound.com and use code BUSR10 to get 10% off on any Simhound gear you might potentially want to augment your sim racing experience. Everything from rigs to boots to gloves, and I can tell you they're pretty good, and we love to see them support university sim racing and all of us here at the BUSR. And now looking forward to the last couple laps here. 8 minutes left of the race. Angus Fender still in a healthy lead, still lapping the fastest out of everyone at the moment. Obviously waiting for Harry Spears to do his first lap on those fresh new tires, fighting for that somehow fastest lap of the race. And yeah, just waiting for that final pit stop, and it'll be really interesting to see what Angus Fender is gonna do. Obviously the gap is big enough to just take the win here, but we know Angus isn't competing for the championship at this stage. Hasn't necessarily, well, has missed 2 races, meaning his championship hopes are all but dead. And it'll be interesting to see if he chooses to potentially secure that fastest lap, or if he's going to prioritize getting the win instead as he goes into the pits now.
He comes into the pits now along with Cav Bud. So the two sort of battles we were looking at, these are the interesting pit stops. So yeah, I've been waiting for this one. I'm excited to see what Angus does here as Cav starts to leave the pit lane. And will he hit his marks properly? I imagine he will. Yeah, that seems all a-okay thus far.
And quick
yeah,
pit
a very
stop,
quick stop there from Angus. So I think, as Jack does come down the main straight now, he's going to have speed on him as he comes out of the pit lane. I think, yeah, you can see Angus going into turn 1 now.
Yeah,
so I think
a couple of seconds. Not an unattainable gap though. So we'll see. Obviously Angus was quicker for most of these last couple laps, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see now. Harry Spears rounding out the final hairpin for his first attempt at the Simhound fastest lap of the race. Will be coming across the line now, and no, that's his personal best, a 2:05.8, but that's still 0.3 off of the best lap. And obviously we know that the first lap isn't necessarily the best one, or even the second lap for these tires. But with 5 minutes left to go, that's 3-4 attempts, depending on a little bit on the pace exactly. That's 0.3 to find, and we'll see.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like you say, with the tyres, but also he's been used to those sort of almost hour and a half old tyres. So this is going to be a completely different style of driving. Braking later, turning in, relying on those tyres a little bit more than he has been for the last hour and 20 minutes. So it's not just the tyres, but also the driver that needs to get used to things. I think, did he lose it a little bit there, or maybe it was just the camera angle as he heads down towards the
looked like a
hairpin.
little bit of a drift. But
He's just showboating, that's all he's doing.
Definitely. Let's see here, onboard view of whatever that was. It's a little bit of a drift there, but yeah, not exactly a Japanese car there. Bentley, unfortunately, not able to really do that. Obviously known for a little bit of a loose rear end, especially off the exit of the corners, as there's Mushtaq, just as we saw him there on the grass. A safer rejoin this time. Unfortunately has fallen almost all the way back, and yeah, that's just seems like a little bit too much throttle there on the exit of the corner, maybe a little bit of a curb hit as well, and unfortunately that is the car around. A little bit difficult in these conditions, as we know.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to do in these conditions, so yeah, it's nice to see obviously a better rejoin this time than previously. As we see Cam Gold come in for his final pit stop, we'll see where he comes out compared to Ramley and Wells, and possibly Fletcher. As we see, yeah, that everyone's coming in for their final pit stops now. Langstaff Foster pushing it until literally the last lap by the looks of it. Oh no, there she is.
Yep,
yeah,
just
you
a
don't
little
really
bit
want to be
behind.
pushing it. No mistakes or anything like that, because that would be awkward if you get disqualified for not doing your 2 pit stops. So
Yep.
yeah, as we see everyone shake out to where they should be for these final 3 minutes of the race now.
Yeah, at this stage, we're not really expecting anything major. A couple engines might. I mean, obviously, we know incidents can happen at the end, but it does look like the barring anything major, it does look like everyone's able to kind of get into their proper positions as I don't know, except for maybe a little bit of a not optimal pit stop there. We'll see what's going on there. A little bit slow, but able to get running, and that's List going through as well. So List able to get a good position from that as well. But
Looks
yeah,
like
I think
Langstaff Foster went a little bit long in her box, which
yeah,
made that a bit of a longer pit stop, and List has managed to take that position.
yeah. Unfortunately, that gap not enough. So currently, Langstaff Foster 5-second gap to Jason List. So unfortunately, that pit stop not able to make that fight happen. Calf Bud stayed in 7th place after all that. Jimmy Lin 15 seconds the gap between those two. So that battle, I'm not sure if Jimmy had repairs at the end. No, it didn't. Just that was just purely on pace. So obviously, whatever damage, the damage wasn't repaired at any point, and whatever loss of time as a result, is actually just not able to really keep up with the pace of Calf Bud. So Calf takes 7th place so far, again barring any major incidents. Just an update on Harry Spears' attempt for the Simhan fastest lap of the race. Not working out right now. Not really able to get in clear air. Last lap there was a bit of traffic. Has a bit of clear air now. Only Nathan Carey up ahead on the road. Last lap was a 2:07.8, obviously quite far off from the 2:05.5 that is to beat. So Angus Fender holding on to that one for now, trying to break that streak of Harry Spears' fastest laps of the race. As we are, I believe, it's gonna be close on the line whether this is actually the last lap or not. 30 seconds to go. Yeah, it's gonna be a couple seconds either way. We'll be watching that. But either way, Harry Spears currently in 1st position, kind of dominated the race. Jack Noah was good in the beginning, but once Angus Fender was able to get through, that was that, and has been quite strong so far. We will go for another lap, just a couple seconds shy, 2 seconds as we cross the line. And yeah, we will go for one more lap, and I hope everyone fueled for this lap, because we have seen this happen before, where that extra lap, especially a long one, which Nurburgring is, that extra lap has caught people out, and I think that's going to be exciting to watch out for.
Yeah, it can be a killer. I know a couple of times at Hungaroring, I'm not sure what it is with that track, I've underfueled the car, and that extra lap can be a killer. But yeah, Jack Noller just within those 2.6 seconds. It was probably, if Angus really wanted to risk it, he probably could have slowed down those 2 seconds before the end of the race, but it would have been a bit close for comfort. So yeah, sending everyone around for one last lap, one last attempt at trying to keep it clean and not spinning around this circuit. But also, one last attempt for Harry Spears, try and get that fastest lap. So, you know, risk versus reward, I guess, in that case.
Definitely, and I don't think Angus was willing to wait 2 seconds on that line there. Jack Noller still a little bit too close, so I don't think slowing down would have been the best opportunity. A 2:06.3 for Harry Spears on the last lap, so it doesn't really look like he's going to be able to fight for that. especially with the tires not necessarily being the quickest, but now is the time to try. Has plenty of gap behind, so no real threat of really anything as Harry Spears rounds out the second sector for the last time. And yeah, quite a dominant performance. Gave us a Jack Norrie put up a very good fight, especially considering the strategy. And coming out through the final chicane, a little bit of a bounce there. Jack Norrie taking a little bit more cleanly there in the background. And through the final hairpin, Angus Fender comes out onto the main straight and will take victory here at rainy Nürburgring, getting his first victory of the season in quite dominant fashion. Jack Norrie comes home second, and we'll be looking forward to Harry Spears coming in third in just a moment as Ishan Wells around in turn 1 as well on his last lap. Oh, and collecting Oliver Fletcher also around there. So not exactly optimal from them, as Jimmy Lynn and Faruqi there in
not
8th
optimal
and
from Harry
9th
either
place. Oh, yeah, no, not optimal at all. Not really able to... Oh, that's definitely not optimal, but a nice looking drift either way. Harry Spears takes third position there. So the fastest lap, the Simhound fastest lap, will go to Angus Fender. And yeah, no, it's a very good fight for the victory there, as Dimitris Tumana is his first race of the season, coming through the second sector for one last time, rounding out the fastest corner on the circuit. Cam Gold just ahead of him, lap behind as well. Tumana is coming through the chicane for the last time, and he will take fourth place in this race. And a good performance from him for his first race of the season, especially considering the Porsche not necessarily known as the best car in the wet, able to do very well keeping that car on track at decent pace. Jason List in the Ferrari coming through the last hairpin as well. He will take fifth position, a strong performance considering the start for Jason List. And yeah, that'll be fifth position. Anna Langsdale Foster, Calf Bud currently sixth and seventh, quite just only a couple seconds behind them, or only a couple seconds separating them. And yeah, I think Anna will not really be happy with that one. Sixth place, a bit disappointing. Conversely, I think Calf will be very happy with seventh place. So yeah, I think, and that's that race as we see Ishan Wells into the wall there at the end of the race as well. So strong performance from Angus Fender. Jack Norrie in second place, Harry Spears in third. Fastest lap of the race going to Angus Fender. I'd say we had a quite entertaining race there.
Yeah, I think it was, we had a bit of a big lull, but particularly at the start, it was nice to see in a few different strategy options, as we said, with those, the lack of needing to change tires and fuel strategy and things like that. So, not necessarily a classic, but it was certainly an entertaining watch throughout.
Definitely, and always when you have weather like this, it's always a factor that comes into play, and it's very nice to see the variance, I think, in strategies, especially. I mean, we were looking at fuel level strategies, and while we're used to seeing some of that, we're never really used to seeing it play as big of an impact as today. I think obviously with no tire change, the fuel was really the only play on the strategy. And I think Jack Noah actually pulled it to perfection. Just the pace was just not quite enough today. But yeah, unfortunately, I think Angus Fender's just ultimate pace was what gave him the victory today.
Yeah, I think Jack managed to hold him at the start with what as we can see now is that heavier fuel load. But yeah, Angus's pace today was just above everyone else's. But yeah, a good comeback from Jack after a strong event at Brands Hatch, but then not so strong at Zolder. So yeah, it's good to see Jack doing well again today, and Harry falling down a little bit. But and after that, Jack takes the lead in the championship back.
Yeah, so that's the lead of the championship for Jack, and obviously Angus not really in the championship fight, not really doing the full calendar. Um, so it'll be interesting to see whether this third place has an impact in the rest of the championship, because we can expect when Harry Spears and Jack Noah are the two top drivers, when Angus Fender's not racing, we can expect those two to be fighting for those first and second positions. So with this 1/3 position for Harry Spears, it's gonna be interesting to see whether that has a championship implication in the end. We'll be moving to interviews very shortly. Just sorting that out. Have a little bit of a new procedure today, so it might take a little bit of time. So just bear with us for a moment. But yeah, no. Just to while we wait on that, fastest lap of the race also. Unfortunately for Harry Spears, he did take new tires, wasn't really able to get that. And was that more of a, do you think it was a car thing, or was the was it just not something that, I mean, was Angus's first couple of laps on relatively high field just that strong?
I think it was Angus was just strong today. We've seen obviously Harry, the sort of the Spears and Bentley combination has been supreme throughout the year, or this season so far with the fastest lap, the Simhound fastest lap. So I think it was down to Angus and his performance at the start of the race. I think he put in a stellar couple of laps at the start of that stint once he got past Nola. So all credit to him for taking that Simhound fastest lap this week.
Yeah, another driver I want to really pick out is Timanes. Fourth place, first race of the season for him. Um, Good performance coming in, I would say, relatively cold, especially considering a wet race. Um, Not the easiest position to be thrown into.
Yeah, I think he did well. Obviously had that little bit of a break. So to come back in today and finish P4, I think is perhaps what we've come to expect of him. In fairness, from the last few seasons, he's shown good pace. You know, each season he's been getting better and better, and making that Porsche work, which he struggled with in the past. But yeah, today did well with that twitchy car from Stuttgart.
Yeah, no, definitely. Um, just while we wait as well, it's another like we've noticed that obviously we have a lot of McLarens in the series. We have a lot of BMWs in the series. Today, the BMW looked very strong, especially when it came to handling the curbs, the chicanes. Um, but we did actually see the Ferrari and the Porsche be strong, and from historical pace, how much do you think that is just the pace of the car versus the pace of the drivers? Because we know that Simonis can be quick, but conversely, we know that Anna Langstaff Foster generally is able to take that fourth position or third position when Angus isn't around. So, do you think this was Timonis being strong, List being strong, or whether the car balance in the wet started to play a factor?
Yeah, I think obviously GT3s are a bopped series, so there's balanced performance. So all the cars, in theory, should be on the same sort of level in terms of performance. But there are those little differences here and there, and I think in the wet, those do get mitigated a little bit. Obviously, the Porsche and the Ferrari seem to struggle on curbs more than even the McLaren or especially the BMW. In the wet, you can't necessarily use those curbs as much, so that sort of mitigates that impact. So I think they were helped out a little bit by the conditions, but I think you can't take that away from the drivers. They did well. They had to do well in these conditions. So I think it was certainly primarily the drivers, but maybe a little bit of getting a bit of extra performance from the cars in comparison to normal.
Yeah, definitely adaptability also a major factor here. Um, but yeah, no, it's a very interesting situation when you get onto these tracks, and obviously a lot of the knowledge we have about these tracks, about the balance of performance, tends to be from a dry track. So throwing these cars onto the wet track, throwing different levels of drivers onto the wet track. Obviously, we saw some more inexperienced drivers struggle quite a bit, um, but Yeah, no, it's definitely something that is always going to be a factor when it comes to sim racing, your experience level and being able to adapt to these kind of conditions. But just touching on that, if you want to level up your experience level in the esports industry, uh, BSR is partnered with SimStaff and to offer some career opportunities in the esports and sim racing industry. So if you're ever interested in any of that, head over to either our Discord at busr.gg/discord or simstaff.net, and you can take a look at those career opportunities and get involved in esports yourself. And you can level up your experience level as well. But we're just about to head into the interviews as far as I can tell. So we're just waiting for those final moments there, just sorting all that out. Yeah, I would say any drivers of the day. And that's a tough choice every time, Max. But what would you say?
I think Sumanis put in a good performance, as we've already highlighted, and Cav Bud as well, who has also come into the series, as you said earlier, has come in cold and had a good performance today. So I think they've done well. Cam Gold as well, I think, came back from starting in the pit lane in that 10-second penalty as a result, and we saw him in a few different battles climbing up the field. So yeah, I think it was a good race from a few different people in the wet today.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, and looking ahead as well, I'm just trying to remember what track is next, actually. Um, but looking ahead, we're expecting dry. I remember that much. Um, is it a challenge for these drivers to go from wet to dry to wet?
I think not necessarily going back and forth. I think certainly having the wet race thrown in is, it throws their plans up in the air a little bit, especially because all they're given before the race is there is a chance of rain, and how much of a chance there is. So, you can practice all week and then suddenly show up, and the server be completely different to what you're expecting. So, I think going back to the dry for them next week, it'll be a bit more back to normal, but obviously we don't know what temperature it's going to be, the track and ambient temperature, the time of day, and how that affects the strategy. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the guys cope to that aspect of the weather conditions.
Yeah, it'll definitely be an interesting one to see. Apologies for the delays on the interviews. Just trying to sort everything out. Um, it'll be
I think
just a moment. We'll get you going on that. Um, right. So we're gonna start off with hello Harry. Welcome to the commentary booth. I don't know. That was a third position today. How did you feel?
Coming third and not too far behind, excluding the pit stop for tyres at the end. Not too far behind the leaders. I think it's yeah, it could have been a lot worse. Pretty proud of the result, I'd say.
That's good to hear. Just
That's
I saw you obviously tried for those tires there, but
I saw you obviously
what the fastest lap attempt was it something that you were obviously you're going for it, but was it something you just struggled? That you were obviously you're going for it, but was it something you just struggled with on pace, or was it something with the conditions just not able to feel right with the car?
yeah, fastest lap at the end. That was just sort of that was sort of a shot in the dark. Sort of grasped at straw, thinking, oh, like yeah, it's just like yeah, I might as well. Yeah, I thought I thought I might as well just go for the fastest lap. It was unlikely that I'd be able to do it because Agnes's pace was just amazing. Like getting that mid 205 in the first stint, just unbelievable. So I thought might as well go for it, try and get the sim pound fastest lap. But yeah, it just wasn't meant to be. I think my pace just wasn't strong enough to do.
All right. I don't know, Max. Do you want to ask any questions?
No, I think, yeah, obviously we've seen
Harry, you've had the match made in heaven with you and the Bentley so far this season, and also you highlighted at the start that this is possibly the worst combination for you. But yeah, obviously, like you say, still getting that third place is a positive for you, and just being right behind Jack, your championship rival. So how do you feel about the championship battle? You guys seem to have a bit of a back and forth going at the minute. How do you feel about the rest of the season?
Yeah, definitely confident. Because I think Jack says that Hungaroring is a weak track for him. It's a weak one for me, but I think I can. I think I can overcome it. And it's yeah, it should be good. I think. I think there's some decent track coming up, and especially Imola at the end. Looking forward to that because the Bentley is very good around there.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Harry, and congratulations on the podium. And we'll be seeing you at Hungaroring.
Yeah,
no, Kyalami next, actually.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
thanks, Harry.
See you guys.
All right. And we'll be bringing in our second place finisher. So, Jack Noah, just one moment. Hello, Jack. How are you doing? Second place in the race. He tried to go for that strategy to get back ahead of Angus. Didn't quite work out, but what are your thoughts on the race?
Yeah, it was a good race, especially at the start. It was a great battle with Angus there. It was brilliant fun. But then it obviously quieted down a bit. I had a lot more fuel than Angus was running, so he pulled out the start. But as it flipped around, he said something. Didn't quite get back in the groove of his tyres, and probably my weight advantage in the middle stint got me closer again. Unfortunately, I missed my pit box, so not entirely tied to reverse, but you have to get moved, and then that cost 3 seconds. And that's when Angus got past. So I think if I got that correct, I would have come out in front. But so close, but yet so far. But anyway, good points. Beat Harry. Angus got the fastest lap, even though Harry pitted to try and get it as well. So I don't know whether that puts us equal on points in the championship or me slightly ahead. But good to be back on pace again, given the last 2 races I haven't been quite there. But good, glad to enjoy it, and with all the time going around with exams and everything, it's good fun.
Yeah, you said at the start the battle with Angus was really good. It was really nice to see you guys going back and forth again, sort of a bit of a throwback to the previous seasons. Did you feel the pressure with him behind you during that part of the race, or is it just routine? You've done this a lot of times now. Is it just another race?
Yeah, I just trust Angus is aggressive, but he races clean. So I didn't really feel pressure because I knew I was from the straight line speed advantage that BMW had, which didn't normally, means he would be on a lot lighter fuel. So basically, all it was a bonus the longer I kept him behind because he couldn't run away out front. So yeah, it was a good fight. There wasn't really crazy pressure. Just with the ride height I was running at the start of the race, I was complaining a bit offline. So just had to manage that on the brakes to turn 1. So good fun, nice aggressive racing. But he got past and eventually got the win. So congrats to him, and look forward to battling Harry for the rest of the title.
Yeah, speaking of that title, looking ahead to Kyalami, how confident are you? I mean, obviously, the swing of points today is rather interesting. When previously you've been trading first and second places, now Harry with the third, you with the second. You think that swing's gonna affect it coming the next few races, or you think you're gonna get back to that 1-2 cycle?
I imagine if Angus doesn't keep racing, especially because of AOR, it might go back to 1-2. It depends again if Grant Smith as well turns up. So we'll see. Kyalami's not typically been one of my strongest tracks, but it is the qualifier for SRO at the moment, so I've got to be spending a lot of time there anyway. So we'll see how it goes. But fingers crossed I can take the win again. But with regards to first second swapping, the fastest lap point sort of pays dividends to that working perfectly, and as Harry has a few of those, it's sort of messed with the flow of that anyway. So not too fussed about it being a second, third this time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll probably end up speaking to you at Kyalami as well.
Thank you very much, unless you go some rest of the grid as well. All right, take care. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and let's bring in our winner. hello, Angus. Congratulations on the win. Congratulations on the Simhound fastest lap of the race as well. What are your thoughts on the race?
Yeah, it was a really interesting one, if I'm honest with you. Strategy came into it much more than I thought it would, being wet. I thought you could pretty much pick and choose what to do with fuel. The tyre would stay there, as the wets last longer than the slicks usually. But I came out of my first stop, and it took me a good 10 laps to get the tyre actually going again. I was losing seconds and seconds a lap. I was getting quite wound up about it, thinking I was going to lose the lead, but ended up just being enough so that when Jack made his stop, he was just behind me. But from that point on, we were in the same boat, I imagine. So yeah, able to hang on. It's cool to return to BUSR after last season and come back on a win. So yeah, it's good to be back.
Are you saying obviously there was a lot more strategy involved than you thought there was going to be? So what was your strategy going into the race? Was it like how do you fuel the car, and were you ever even considering taking tyres at all, or was it just a straight go to the end kind of gig?
Um, it was kind of on the fly. I didn't really do much prep for this. I only drove a couple laps this evening for the race. I had like a vague idea as to how much wet could do from practice I'd done for AOR a few weeks ago, which was similar conditions actually. But as it turned out, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna wing it, and I'm gonna try and make these tires go to the end. And glad that I did that because it ended up being the right call. But yeah, it was just kind of my own judgment. I didn't have a plan before the start. I just did my fuel as a kind of 60-40 proportion and went from there. Not much else to it.
All right, and well, you're not going to be racing. Well, actually, which races are you planning on racing, if any, for the rest of the season?
Well, this one's been because the week break in AOR.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad it's here because I'd have felt really bad if I hadn't have come back the season after. So at least I've done this round. But I can't really plan anything out at the moment. My life's hectic as hell. Got a load of exciting things coming up in the real world and virtual stuff. So I'll have to keep my ear to the ground and see when I can come back and do some more. But if I get the chance, I will.
All right. Well, if and when that happens, we'll obviously welcome you back with open arms. And yeah, yeah, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the win again. Good luck with, well, everything. And hopefully we'll be seeing you again soon.
Yeah. Cheers, Juuso. Cheers, Max. Good job on the comms.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. All right. So, I think there's not much else to say here. Angus with a strong win and some interesting championship implications for the future.
Yeah, I think the difference between the points in second and third and the points between first and second, that could have a big impact because if we see this flip flopping that we've seen between Jack and Harry, so far in the championship, it may actually be Harry's advantage that he's taken third at this one because he'll have that different points gap. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it shapes out, and yeah, I think this is something that will go right down to the wire until we get to the last lap at Imola.
Yep, and we've gone right down to the wire on our stream, so I think it's time for us to start wrapping things up as well. Yeah, I'll give you the chance for any final thoughts, anything you want to bring up before we go.
No, I think I've been sat in my Simhound rig for this one. Slightly different perspective on the race, and as we've mentioned throughout, BUSR 10 to get 10% off at simhound.com, and of course, building this rig myself has given me the skills that has enabled me to pursue a career at simstaff.net/careers. So, but attempt comments on the race. Like I said, it wasn't a classic, but it was solid performance from a lot of different drivers. And yeah, looking forward to the next one out at Kyalami, a personal favourite track of mine. So I'll be interested to see how all the drivers tackle that one.
All right. Well, that is going to be it for us tonight. I've been Juuso. With me has been Max. In the production, we have had Pete and Tom. They've done a great job today, so thank you for that. And everyone watching, obviously, thank you for watching. Thanks for supporting. And we'll be back on Saturday for F1, and we'll be back on Monday around the same time for Kyalami as well. So come check that out. It should be a good race. As Max said, it's a great track. And yeah, we'll be back very soon. And I hope you all have a very good night.